Hi everyone, this is Frank DiMora with the Last Chronicles of Planet Earth. Today is the May 13th, 2011, and you're going to have to excuse me. I am sick, but the news is so important that I want to try to get this news out to you. Excuse me. As you know, Psalm 83 is a prophecy about a war in the Middle East that hasn't taken place yet. And I've been giving you a lot of information about the nations that are coming against Israel, because they're the same nations that God points out in Psalm 83. And many of you know, or there's a possibility that many of you don't know, that these nations are getting ready to march on Israel on May 15th of this month. And so I want to bring to your attention the news about what's happening already. And if you would like to get my book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, for free, just go to my website and you'll see the front and the back cover of my book. And right below it will be a link. And just click the link and you can read the documentary for free. And it's updated as of just last month. So you'll be able to get all this information for free. And just go to www.bibleprophecyman.com, and I'll put this up on the screen for you in case you forget that. But I want to give you news out of the Middle East today. It says the Jordanians and Egyptians take to streets for pro-Palestinian protest. Now first, before you even get in past the headline for the report, if you don't know anything about the history of Israel and the peace talks and what's happening, it's very important for you to understand, because we know from Paul the Apostle, or Jesus told the Apostle Paul, that in the last days when they're talking peace and safety, sudden destruction is going to come. And you'll find that in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3. And it was going to happen as a woman would labor too. So we know that the events are getting more intense as we get closer to the Lord. Now, as far as the peace talks, obviously if they said that destruction was going to be coming when they were calling for peace and safety, one of the major points that I want to make sure that you understand is that Jordan and Egypt were really good friends with Israel. Egypt has or at least had a treaty, a peace treaty that was established in 1979 up until a couple months ago. So, and Jordan was the same. So let me read what it has to say here. It says the Jordanians and the Egyptians, by the way, when you read Psalm 83, the Jordanians and the Egyptians are part of this attack that God names specifically these countries and others, the border Israel, that will be attacking Israel. So when we see that they're involved in possibly marching on Israel, then you should be paying attention. Jordanians and Egyptians take to the streets Friday, calling for the establishment of the Palestinian state and the end of displacement of refugees. The protest took place just 2 days before the Nakba Day. Palestinians mourn the catastrophe of which their ancestors were expelled in the 1948 Israeli War of Independence, creating thousands of refugees. Excuse me. Goes on to say, and I'm going to give you the highlights. You can see it's a 2-page article, but I'm going to give you some of the highlights. And when you go to my site, you can click and read the whole article. It says, in Cairo, thousands rallied in support for the Palestinians, beginning a Facebook-generated campaign aimed at marching on the borders of the Palestinian territories. And obviously, the borders of the Palestinian territories are Israel. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators are not unusual in Jordan and Egypt, but gathering and marching solidated on the Facebook are. So they've did the same thing that they did in Tunisia and Egypt and these other, Yemen, and in Libya. They started with the campaign against these governments by Facebook, and this is exactly what the Jordanians and the Egyptians and the Palestinians and other Arabs in that area are doing. It says organizers have apparently been inspired by the Arab uprising in Egypt and other Arab countries that were heavily dependent on social network sites. In Jordan, protesters chanted, "The people want to liberate Palestine." They also shouted, "The people want an end of Wadi Arabia," which is a reference to the 1994 peace treaty with Israel. And this is again in reference to Jordan. Just like Egypt, they had a treaty, but as you can see now, that's why it's really important to pay attention to what Paul said, because when they're talking peace and safety, sudden destruction will come. And now the friends of Israel have turned on them, and they want to get rid of the peace process or the peace agreement that was already installed with this country. So you see where we're headed. We're headed right to fulfill what Jesus talks about. And then down further it says hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced during the Israeli-Arab Wars in 1948 and 1967, and the fate of nearly 4 million Palestinian refugees and their descendants is one of the thorniest issues in a Middle East conflict. Now, one of the reasons most of the articles talk about the 1948 and the 1967 wars is because Israel in 1948 became a nation again. Actually, the specific date was May 14th of 1948, and obviously the Arabs are going to march on Israel on May 15th, because that was the day after Israel became a nation again, and the Arabs went to war and they lost against Israel. And then again in 1967 this happened. Now in 1967 this was a pinnacle point here, because in 1967 the Arabs occupied and owned East Jerusalem, which is the most holy site to the Jews and the third most holy site to the Islamic nations, the Arabs. And we know from Zechariah 12:3 that in the last days all the nations would burden themselves, who burden themselves against Israel and Jerusalem, will be cut into pieces. And if you've been following the peace talks or since 1979, as they've been coming and going, trying to establish some form of peace agreement, that Jerusalem, this city, has been one of the major sticking points for no peace agreement between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So again, we're seeing exactly what God told the prophet Zechariah about the city of Jerusalem. And when you accompany both Psalm 83 and 1 Thessalonians 5:3 about the call for peace and safety in Zechariah, you know that the footsteps to the Psalm war that hasn't been fulfilled yet is really getting very, very close. So I just wanted to point this information out to you because it's in the news and only God knows what's actually going to happen on the 15th. But, and I've said this before in some of my previous videos, there is a possibility that things can get out of control. It could escalate, and if it does, and Israel has to use force to stop these people from pouring in to Jerusalem and into Israel, then it could turn out to be a fulfillment of Psalm 83. And so this is what we should be looking for, just in case, since the Lord told us all these things were going to be happening in this generation. If you read Matthew 24, it says that when you shall see all these things, know that it's near, even at the door. So we know, because we're seeing all of these things, that pretty soon that the 7-year tribulation will start. But we have to see this Psalm war take place, and obviously we don't know exactly how it's going to transpire, but we do know from the current events and what we're seeing here that they are same exact nations that are listed in Psalm 83 that are now massing and getting ready to march, and that's why it's so important to watch. Now, as long as I have a little bit of time left, the first section of this report today for May 13th, you'll see a video, a brand new ABC News report talking about Harold Camping. And Harold Camping is a prophet. He calls himself a prophet, or his followers think that he's a prophet, because he has said that on May 21st of this month, that it's only 8 days away, that the end of the world was going to take place. There was going to be a massive 14 earthquake, magnitude earthquake, and it was going to be the end of the world. Now, obviously, the Lord, as you read the scriptures that I posted at my site, that the Lord said nobody knows the day or the hour. He warned about false prophets that were going to come. He also warned that if they say they're in the desert or in the secret chambers, don't believe them. So there's many scriptures that the Lord keeps telling us, do not be deceived. And Harold Camping is coming out and he's deceiving people, because it's not going to happen. And on May 22nd, everybody's going to know that. But all it does is give Jesus a bad name, and people start laughing at Christians because of what people do, and or they stray away from sound doctrine, and they start giving off these dates. And it's not the first time that it's happened. The Jehovah's Witnesses take the lead on this. The Jehovah's Witnesses have, 15, 20 dates that the Watchtower Society leaders told them that God spoke to them and told them that on certain dates that the end of the world was coming, Jesus was coming. And all of this information, by the way, is in my book, and you'd be able to read all that documentation too. So my main concern is that the people will stay in the organizations with these false prophets, and they'll listen to excuses that are made up by these leaders. But obviously, if you read the Bible, God tells us that if a man does not, if it doesn't come to pass, God told him these things, then they're a false prophet, and you're commanded to get away from them. So it's beyond me why people stay in organizations like this. And mainly, as my education shows me from cults, it's because it's fear. They tell people that if you leave, you're leaving the true organization, when in fact all it is a lie to keep you in under fear. So you better be paying strict attention to sound doctrine, because we are in the last days, and these things are already upon us, and they're going to get a lot worse. You're going to hear other people saying the same kind of things, and you're going to see other false prophets, and you're going to see people who do miracles and wonders, because this is what Jesus said. But not all of them are from God, and you'll know them by their fruits. It's just very important to understand the word of the Lord, and I'm praying that my book and my post and my radio show at the Edge will give you enough information to hopefully drive you to the Bible, so that you can be protected by the Word and in the Word of the Lord for these last days, and you will commit your life over to Jesus Christ. So with that, just pay attention to the news, because we are close. We're definitely close. Thanks.